Much love to you all. Let me get a sound check. But on the chance it's working good, I wish you a wonderful day. Okay. Check, check. How's your sound today? Oh, don't do that. I wish you a wonderful day. Sounds pretty good to me. Awesome. So, what's up, everybody? Much love. This is Jay Baldale, and welcome. If you're new and you end up enjoying this content, then be sure to hit a like, share, or subscribe, and check for some more content because I got a good amount, some good books, good meditations, and a couple good tarot readings. Still need to jump on to do some more of that, but it's been a busy weekend, equinox weekend, and I hope it's been a wonderful one for all of you. First weekend of spring, and that's a good way to go. At least for me, it's beautiful here. But wherever you're at, I'm sure it'll start popping in soon if it hasn't already. That's how it goes. Unless you're in the southern hemisphere, then you guys are hitting fall right now, and that's still pretty wonderful. I love fall and I love spring. I love it all though. It's a lot of wonderful opportunities in this life to enjoy, and the seasons are a great one. Watching the seasons change, the flowers and the trees come back to life, or in the fall it's kind of opposite. The trees themselves kind of become flowers and start changing colors a bunch, and sounds to me like a win-win situation. Okay, so yeah, it was that's why we're having Sunday school today, because I took yesterday off. It seems everybody took yesterday off, and that's okay. Why not? Because it was first Saturday of spring, and I know I was up all Friday night. The goddess and I, we were up getting all kinds of equinox workings in. Some good ones, some good death type of stuff, some good candle magic, and all kinds of fun. So hopefully the same for you guys. Hopefully, if any of you took the little tip I gave and used it, that you'll be paying attention for the ways it's going to happen for you in your life, and I'm rooting for you, that's for sure. Welcome into everybody just coming in. But then also, because I've been busy once again, I'm slacking on the highlighting and the getting ahead. So we will need to work on that as we work through the rest of the introduction today. But that's pretty easy. There could be a lot more difficult tasks in the world, that's for sure. And there are. And you ever watch that show Horrible Jobs? I only watched it a little bit, but I remember one of them where he was like having to scrub these barnacles off of deep sea buoys. I said, man, who? That does seem like a wild job to have. And maybe you've had one of those. Maybe you had a job where you were I don't know, doing something crazy. You ever see the people who have to go up on like those light towers? They have to climb way high up. It's their whole job to go out in the, I don't know, wherever there's these like signal towers that basically just have a light on top, and they got to climb all the way up, change the light. Well, pretty high risk job, but they're strapped in pretty good. But whatever, stuff does happen. Whatever your job is, I really hope that it's something you enjoy, because we all have our job to do in this world, and some people do get a little bit more of a horrible job, you could say. But if it's something they love, well, then it's not going to really be so horrible after all. Everything in its right place, huh? Okay, bookmarks there. Oh, yeah, that's right, but we're right here. And Dub VT, what's up? Always great to see you. I hope you're having such an amazing Sunday. I hope all is well in your world. I imagine spring in your neck of the woods is real pretty. So that's wonderful. Okay, so let's do a tarot poll, actually. We better do that before we get too ahead of ourselves. and says that WT says, listening in at the job now. LOL, I do love it. I call it my service. I can't even call it a job or work. That's a great outlook to have. I had a good phone call with Zero yesterday, which is also part of why I didn't end up streaming because I wanted to make some time for him because we don't get to talk so super often. And so we were talking a lot about that though, that it's not so much about being right or wrong. I mean, there is that to take into consideration because you could say some things are just pretty blatantly wrong. But either way, it's about all about how we're looking at it, all about how we're framing it, all about our interpretation of things. Um, and so, if we can find a really good way to have a good perspective of whatever comes our way, then it's not really going to affect us. And that goes into like what Travis says about controlling the context. So good for you. I'm really happy to hear that for you. And I love you so much. Okay. Now, let's see what the tarot wants to tell us too on this wonderful Sunday. Oh, and no, it's not next Sunday. It's the Sunday after that. That's going to be Easter Sunday, right? Yeah. Oh, cool. I can't wait. I think we're going to go do for at the Catholic church, the local Catholic church, the big sick cathedral. There's going to be like a overnight vigil service for Easter, and so we've been wanting to go make sure to be a part of that. And actually, this car mechanic we've got too, he's a pretty cool guy. He made these really cool Easter eggs with some Old Testament and New Testament, kind of like a Spark Notes thing on them. And I was talking to him a little bit about them, and he said, "Here, have some. Here, I'll show you one of them. Check it out right here. With Joseph and Jesus. Joseph in the Old Testament, Jesus, New Testament. I'm not really very, oh, there goes the book. I'm not really very familiar with the Old Testament. I mean, shoot, I'm also not like an expert on the New Testament, but in time, it is stuff I want to get more learned with. And especially after reading that Manly P. Hall, I really want to take some time to really sit with those books. Oh, yeah, I kind of need to, that's right. This book. Had to pin it like that. Okay, now you ain't going anywhere. Okay, so what do you want us to know, Tara? What do you want us to know for today? First Sunday of spring. Equinox just happened. It was a good one, if you're asking me. We're going to be finishing our intro to the Dhammapada. And that ought to be good. Let's cut it there. And I see a sword. Oh, there was a sword on it. Nice. That's funny that this card would come back up because this came up yesterday when I was doing some reading while I was talking to Zero. And he even said he feels like it's kind of the theme of the reading. And yeah, I would say big time with the equinox going on, adjustment. We've seen her before. We love her. The goddess Ma'at, the goddess of balance, of justice, equanimity, law, all of that. Adjustment. Lamed, the ox goad. So A and L in the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph and Lamed, go together like peanut butter and jelly, you could say, because that's the name of God. All or El, law the other way around, meaning nothingness. And so either way, right, same but different. However, one thing that's interesting is that if we do Eliphas Levi's correspondences, then that L, that all becomes the magician is then Aleph, and then the hanged man is the Lamed. So anyway, though, with what we're looking at here, though, and basically equinox time, perfect balance of light and dark, that's kind of the idea of this whole thing right here. Why are we taking the fool's journey? And if this is the fool's girlfriend, well, that's why, because from the nothingness that we step into, that becomes a creation, becomes a matrix, whatever you want to call it, manifestation. it's kind of all this process of balancing up so when you die and you go to those great halls of judgment, you can just kind of you can get you know you don't got nothing to worry about, not a single thing to worry about. And so Libra too represented in this card, and Libra also being the scales, balance, alpha and omega, beginning and the end, you see there in the card. So yep, this is definitely well, at least for me, and knowing what we worked on for the equinox, then this to me is a good sign. This tells me that exactly what we wanted to achieve is already, it's all that energy is already working, and that sword in the middle is our, I guess, is our way to keep focused. Also, a good symbol of keeping that single pointed focus. And one true goddess, what's up? Much love to you. I hope you're having such a wonderful Sunday. Okay, well, there it is. There's our energy. And her sword, how she's holding in the middle, too. And the Buddha even says that the actual path of enlightenment, the path of the Buddha, is the middle way between two extremes. So let's see what else he's got to say. And today we start with the stages of enlightenment. Okay. Despite the Buddha's extraordinary capabilities, we must accept his own testimony that until the night of his enlightenment, he saw life essentially the way the rest of us do. Yet after that experience, he lived in a world where concepts like time and space, causality, personality, death all mean something radically different. What happened to turn ordinary ways of seeing inside out? Well, there's your hanged man right there, too, huh? And even the magician as well. That's why it's interesting. Those two become your Aleph Lamed combo because it's kind of the same thing a little bit, but same but diff. But you could say that about a lot of aspects of the tarot, really. In the Vinaya Pitaka, chapter 3, verse 4, the Buddha left a concise map of his journey to nirvana, a description of the course of his meditation that night, couched in the kind of language a brilliant clinician might use in the lecture hall. In Buddhism, the stages of this journey are called the four dhyanas, from the Sanskrit word for meditation, which later passed into Japanese as Zen. Scholars sometimes treat passage through the four dhyanas as a peculiarly Buddhist experience. But the Buddha's description tallies not only with Hindu authorities like Patanjali, but also with Western mystics like John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, Augustine, and Meister Eckhart. What the Buddha is giving us is something of universal application, a precise account of levels of awareness beneath everyday waking state. On that night, he tells us he seated himself for meditation with the resolve not to get up again until he had attained his goal. Then he continues, I roused unflinching determination, focused my attention, made my body calm and motionless, and my mind concentrated and one pointed. Standing apart from all selfish urges and all states of mind harmful to spiritual progress, I entered the first meditative state, where the mind, though not quite free from divided and diffused thought, experiences lasting joy. By putting an end to divided and diffused thought, with my mind stilled in one pointed absorption, I entered the second meditative state quite free from any wave of thought, and experienced the lasting joy of the unitive state. As that joy became more intense and pure, I entered the third meditative state, becoming conscious in the very depths of the unconscious. Even my body was flooded with that joy of which the noble ones say, they live in abiding joy who have stilled the mind and are fully awake. Then, going beyond the duality of pleasure and pain and the whole field of memory making forces in the mind, I dwelt at last in the fourth meditative state, utterly beyond the reach of thought, in that realm of complete purity which can be reached only through detachment and contemplation. This was my first successful breaking forth like a chick breaking out of its shell. Nice. Definitely. A great way to put it, especially if you're familiar with Tatwashi. Okay, the last quiet phrase is deadly. Our everyday life, the Buddha is suggesting, is lived within an eggshell. We have no more idea of what life is really like than a chicken has before it hatches. Oh, that's pretty good. That right there is pretty good. We have no idea. We have no more idea of what life is like than a chicken has before it hatches. Excitement and depression, fortune and misfortune, pleasure and pain are storms in a tiny private shell bound realm we take to be the whole of existence. Yet we can break out of this shell and enter a new world. For a moment, the Buddha draws aside the curtain of space and time and tells us what it is like to see into another dimension. When I read these words, I remember listening to the far off voice of Neil Armstrong that evening in 1969, telling us what it felt like to stand on the moon and look up at the earth floating in a sea of stars. Oh, I can only imagine so. I can really only imagine so. One thing I love to do is put on the live stream feed from the International Space Station. If any of you have never done that, I really recommend just sitting and meditating on the live stream feed from the universe or the space station. Let me tell you something. I know, space doesn't exist. The moon and the planets and everything's not real. Yada yada, dude. How? Give me a break, you guys. Uh, go buy a telescope and go look at them, or just use your eyeballs. You can see the moon pretty dang good, but also the planets look kind of like stars until. But go get a high powered telescope. Go look at them. Just tell me they're still not real. Anyway, yeah, definitely. I think about that a lot. I think about the effect it would have on the consciousness of everybody if everybody did get a chance to actually go up into space and really just watch the planet. That's where hey, that's where I live, and wow, it really is just floating through this sea of stars. All right then. The Buddha's voice reaches us from no distance at all, yet from a place much more remote. He is at the center of consciousness, beyond the thinking apparatus itself. As in some science fiction story, he has slipped through a kind of black hole into a parallel universe and returned to tell the rest of us what lies outside the boundaries of the mind. And don't they theorize something about, which I don't think they've proven, it's more of a theory, that our universe or our galaxy is existing inside of a black hole? Could be. Hard to say for sure, I guess. Maybe as technology and things advance, we'll figure that out. But I'm sure there'll still be people talking about, no, we're not. We're a flat Earth on the back of a giant dragon, and it's flying through a ocean of something. I don't know, man. People are going to believe whatever they really want to believe a lot of the time. You can only do so much. As in some science fiction story, oh wait, I read that part. To capture this vision will require many metaphors. Like snapshots of the same scene from different angles, they will sometimes appear inconsistent. This should present no problem to the modern mind. We are used to physicists presenting us with exotic and conflicting models. Phenomena described as both particles and waves, parallel futures where something both takes place and does not, universes that are finite but unbounded. The mathematics behind these models is the best that imagination can do, and we laymen are satisfied. We cannot check the mathematics, but we are quite content to get an intuitive sense of what such radical ideas mean. Let us give the Buddha the same credence. Beneath the simple verses of the Dhammapada, he will show us a universe every bit as fascinating as Bohr's or Einstein's. The Buddha's dry description of the four dhyanas hides the fact that traversing them is a nearly impossible achievement. Even to enter the first dhyana requires years of dedicated, sustained, systematic effort, the kind of practice that turns an ordinary athlete into a champion. There you go. Just to enter the first dhyana. And even though there are some people who are faster learners than others, um, You already know. You already know the rant I'm gonna go off on if I do, and so just be patient with yourself. Just keep putting in the work, and you'll get it. This is an apt comparison, for the word the Buddha chose for right effort is one that is used for discipline, athletic training in general, and gymnastics in particular. When the Buddha mentions with what determination he sat down for meditation that night, I remember the look I have seen on the face of championship athletes waiting to launch the performance that will win them an Olympic gold medal. You guys remember that meme of what's that the swimmer guy's name? Phelps, right? Fred Phelps, I think was his name, the Olympic swimmer. And there was like that one meme going around from the Olympics. This was already like I don't know, a couple summer Olympics back, but he just had that like, oh, he had that nasty look. He had his headphones in and he had that face like he was just about ready to tear stuff up. There you go. They have trained their body for years, sharpened their concentration, unified their will, and that moment they have one thing on their mind and the one thing only. Oh, wait, you know what? Fred Phelps might actually be the POS that's in the Westboro Baptist Church. I can't remember the swimmer guy's name, but I'm sure if you just like look up Olympic swimmer, mean face, it'll pull up the guy. Nothing less is required for meditation. Behind the Buddha's apparently effortless passage through deeper states of consciousness lie years of the most arduous training. Okay, the first dhyana. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the word that would be more equal for what gnosis actually means. When they talk about gnosis, pretty sure dhyana would be that word. But like I said, I think that depends on who you ask, and I think the jury's still out to lunch on deciding a for sure answer on that. So the first yana, when a lover of music listens to a concert, she is likely to close her eyes. If you call her name or touch her on the shoulder, she may not even notice. Attention has been withdrawn from her other senses and is concentrated in her hearing. The same thing happens as meditation deepens, except that attention is withdrawn from all the senses and turned inward. Western mystics call this recollection, a literal translation of what the Buddha calls right attention. Or contemplation, like I say about contemplation, or they'll talk about contemplative mysticism. But yeah, gnosis is another good word for it. No one has given a better comparison than St. Teresa. Attention returns from the outside world, she says, like bees returning to the hive, and gathers inside in intensive activity to make honey. Sound, touch, and so on are still perceived, but they make very little impression, almost as if the senses have been disconnected. Gradually, as the quiet settles in, we realize we are in a new world. For a while, we cannot see. Like moviegoers entering a dark theater for a matinee, our eyes are still dazzled by the glare from outside. To learn to move about in this world takes time. A blind man has hearing and touch to help direct him from place to place. But in the unconscious, with the senses closed down, there are no landmarks that one can recognize. At this level, we begin to see how the mind works. Cut off from its accustomed sensory input, it runs around looking for something to stimulate it. The Buddha specifies two aspects of this divided thought, the ordinary two track mind, trying to keep attention on two things at once, and diffuse thought, the mind's tendency to wander. The natural direction of this movement is outward, toward the sensations of experience. To turn inward, this movement has to be reversed. Throughout the first jhana, the centrifugal force of the thinking process is gradually absorbed as retention is called. Ordinarily, thought follows a course of stimulus and response. Some event, whether in the world or in the mind, sets off a chain of associations and attention follows. To descend through the personal and conscious, we need concentration that cannot be broken by any sensory attraction or emotional response. In a word, mastery over our senses and our likes and dislikes. To descend through the personal conscious. Most people work through the first jhana by developing this kind of self control during the day. The Buddha, however, has covered this ground already. His passions are mastered and his mind one pointed. When he sits down to meditate, he crosses this region of the mind without distraction. This is only the first leg of a very long journey, but even in itself, it is a rare achievement. The concentration it requires will bring success in any field, along with a deep sense of well being, security, and a quiet joy in living. No great flashes of insight come at this level, but you do begin to see connections between personal problems and their deeper causes. And with this comes the will to make changes in your life. One true God is Michael Phelps. That's the one. Yeah. Fred Phelps. Yeah. He's the one that's in the church that's always saying nasty things about types of people having crazy protests. Michael Phelps is the one. Yeah. Fred Phelps. Oh, goodness gracious. Well, hey, I guess we all got our job to do, huh? No matter how nasty it might be. I had the Phelps part right. I thought I had that part right, but yep. Which Phelps I had wrong. Okay, the second jhana. To talk about regions of the mind like this, I confess, is a little misleading. Between the first and second jhana, there is no demarcation line. Both are areas of what might be called the personal unconscious, that sector of the mind in which lie the thoughts, feelings, habits, and experiences peculiar to oneself as an individual. In the second dhyana, however, concentration is much deeper, and the demands of the senses to taste, hear, touch, smell, or see to experience some sensation or other have become much less shrill. The quiet of meditation is unassailed by the outside world. Distractions can still break the thread of concentration, but much less easily. Gradually, they seem more and more distant. Here, the struggle for self mastery moves to a significantly deeper level. Associations, desires, and thoughts generated by the preoccupations of the day leave behind their disguises of rational, unselfish behavior and appear for what they are. The ego has retreated to more basic demands, the claims of I and mine. Here, to make progress, we become eager for opportunities to go against self will, especially in personal relationships. There is no other way to gain detachment from the self centered conditioning that burdens every human being. Uh oh. The Buddha calls this swimming against the current. The concerted, deliberate effort to dissolve self interest and the desire to serve a larger whole when eons of conditioning have programmed us to serve ourselves first. Oh, yeah. Some of that stuff is in there deep, baby. Oh, that stuff it gets in there and it really worms its way in bad. And keep in mind, like one true goddess was saying to me at one point about how so like even our ancestors who went through super traumatic things like both world wars and all that gets passed down in the DNA and all that. I think some of you know that already, but in case you didn't know about that, then yeah, there you go. That stuff oh man, some of these really heavy gnarly things, they really get in there and they get in there good. Like a bad sliver for anybody else who's done any type of carpentry. Oh yeah, most slivers are pretty easy to get out, but man, some slivers really get you bad. You got to get a knife and you got to cut at your skin because it worked its way in there so good you can't even get it with tweezers. And exactly what they say here, this is painful, but with the pain comes satisfaction in mastering some of the strongest urges in the human personality. When you sit for meditation, you descend steadily, step by step, into the depths of the unconscious. The experience is very much like what deep sea divers describe when they lower themselves into the black waters hundreds of feet down. The world of everyday experience seems as remote as the ocean's surface, and you feel immense pressure in your head as if you were immersed under the weight of a sea of consciousness. The thread of concentration is your lifeline then. If it breaks, you can lose your way in these dark depths. Oh, most definitely. Like they say about crossing through some of these veils on the tree of life. That 30-second path, the first and foremost one, where it's like a hall of a giant cave, a giant hall where there's all these other caves splitting off, and if you don't keep focused on exactly where you need to go, you'll wander into a cave and you'll get stuck there. Here, all the mind's attention, even what ordinarily goes to subconscious urges and preoccupations, is being absorbed in a single focus. This seemingly simple state comes spontaneously only to men and women of great genius, and it contains immense power. The rush of the thinking process has been slowed to a crawl, each moment of thought under control. The momentum of the mind has been gathered into great reserves of potential energy, as an object gathers when lifted against the pull of gravity. In these depths comes a revolutionary realization. The thought is not continuous. Instead of being a smooth, unbroken stream, the thinking process is more like the flow of action in a movie, only a series of stills passing our eyes faster than we can perceive. This idea is one of the most abstract in Buddhism, and movies make such a concrete illustration that I feel sure the Buddha would have appreciated having a reel of film around to show intellectuals like Malunkyaputta. You wouldn't say a movie is unreal, would you? He might ask. But the appearance of continuity is unreal, and confusing a movie with reality is not right understanding. And that's what it goes into that statement again about it's all about your unattachment. So, yep, you watch a movie, you buy a good game. Well, enjoy it, play it, but to get so caught up that you start convincing yourself you're this character in this movie, this TV show, this video game, whatever. Well, now you've really put another layer around the cocoon of ego we all wrap ourselves in, and that just isn't gonna really do you much help. But oh, I want this word too. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't still enjoy it while you're doing it. And especially when we know it's a movie or a game, then the majority of us already are going to be handling it in kind of an unattached way. Um, but everybody's a little different. Most of us find it easy to get involved in certain kinds of movies. We get caught up in the action and forget ourselves, and our body and mind respond as if we were there on the screen. The heart races, blood pressure goes up, fists clench, and the mind gets excited and jumps to conclusions, just as if we were actually experiencing what is happening to the hero or heroine. The Buddha would say, you are experiencing it, and that is the way you experience life too. Boom. This may sound heartless, as if he is saying that excitement and tragedy are no more than a celluloid illusion. Not at all. What he means is that as human beings, our responses should not be automatic. We should be able to choose. There you go. As human beings, our responses should not be automatic. We should be able to choose. When the mind is excited, we jump into a situation and do whatever comes automatically, which often only makes things worse. If the mind is calm, we see clearly and don't get emotionally entangled in events around us, leaving us free to respond with compassion. Most of us have never thought much about the mechanics of film projection, so we are surprised to learn that every moment of image on the screen is followed by a moment of no image when the screen is dark. right? Because that's the way a movie projector is actually working, where it's slides of film, each individual picture, but it's just going so fast that we don't really see what he says here. We don't see the dark parts in between. We just see the pictures moving in a way that it looks like a film being produced, because it is. That's the way it works. We do not perceive these moments of emptiness. Action stimulates the mind, no action bores it. Attention follows the desire to be stimulated and skips over what the mind finds meaningless. The power of imagination jumps the gaps between images, holding them together in our mind. Only when the projector is slowed down do we begin to see the flicker of the screen. When this happens in a movie, our interest wanes. Our attention is not powerful enough to hold together in a continuous flow of images that are broken by more than a fraction of a second. Such a feat requires the concentration of genius. I think it was Keynes who said that Newton had the capacity to hold a single problem in the focus of his mind for days, weeks, even years until it was solved. And if that's the Newton, it's got to be the Isaac Newton that discovered gravity. He was also an occultist apparently. So hey, this is just what is required at this depth in meditation. The thinking process is slowed until you can almost see thought pass by. Yet, instead of one thought following another without rhyme or reason, the mind has such power that the focus of concentration is not disturbed. At this depth in consciousness, the sense world and even the notion of personal identity is far away. Asleep to one's body, asleep even to the thoughts, feelings, and desires that we think of as ourselves, we are nevertheless intensely awake in an inner world, deep in the unconscious, near the very threshold of personality. All right, the third dhyana. If thought is discontinuous, we want to ask, what is between two thoughts? The answer is nothing. A thought is like a wave in consciousness. Between two thoughts, there is no movement in the mind at all. Consciousness itself is a still lake, clear, calm, and full of joy. And that's like what they said in Paths of Poverty and Nivriti. I think it was in that book. And that these ripples that come in, like the samskaras or whichever, or the vrittis themselves, disturb the calmness of this lake of consciousness. When the thought process has been slowed to a crawl in meditation, there comes a time when, without warning, the movie of the mind stops and you get a glimpse right through the mind into deeper consciousness. This is called bodhi, and it comes like a blinding glimpse of pure light accompanied by a flood of joy. This experience is not what Zen Buddhists call no mind. It is only, if I may coin a term, no thought. The thinking process has such immense momentum that even at this depth, concentration has power enough to stop it only for an instant before it starts up again. But the joy of this experience is so intense that all your desires for life's lesser satisfactions merge in the deep, driving desire to do everything possible to stop the mind again. This point marks the threshold between the second and third dhyanas. Crossing this threshold is one of the most difficult challenges in the spiritual journey. You feel blocked by an impenetrable wall. Bodhi is a glimpse of the other side, as you get when you drop a quarter into the telescope near the Golden Gate Bridge. And the shutter snaps open for a 2 minute look at the sea lions frolicking on the rocks. But these first experiences of Bodhi are over in an instant, leaving you so eagerly frustrated that you are willing to do anything to get through. You feel your way along that wall from one end to the other, looking for a break, and finally you realize that there isn't any. And you just start chipping away. It requires the patience of someone trying to wear down the Himalayas with a piece of silk, and you feel you are making about as much progress. This is a rarefied world. Like the outside world, personal identity is far away. You feel as if the wall between yourself and the rest of creation were paper thin. If you are to go further, this wall has to fall. On the opposite side lies the collective unconscious, not necessarily what Jung meant when he coined the term, but what the Buddha calls storehouse consciousness. the strata of the mind shared by every individual creature. Here are stored the seeds of our evolutionary heritage, the race old instincts, drives, urges, and experiences of a primordial past. To dive into these dark waters and stay consciousness, you have to take off your individual personality and leave it on the shore. Paradoxically, this cannot be accomplished by any amount of will and drive associated with the individual self. It is not done just in meditation, but during the day. Doing good works is not enough. The mental state is crucial. There must be no taint of I or mine in what you do, no self interest, only your best effort to see yourself in all. And another good way to help you practice that besides meditation is going to be karma yoga, as we learned about from Swami Vivekananda, because these works that he was telling us about was all about being unattached, all about just doing good for good's sake, just doing work for work's sake, not any kind of reward for such, especially not getting any kind of an ego attachment to it, thinking, oh, look at me, look at how good I'm doing, all of that, just because it's what needs to be done. And you're the one tasked to do it. One way to explain this is that karma has to be cleared before you can cross the wall. All the momentum of the thinking process comes from the residue of karma. To clear our accounts, we have to absorb whatever comes to us with kindness, calmness, courage, and compassion. Karma is not really erased, its negative entries are balanced with positive ones in a flood of selfless service. Right. Highlight most all of that. When the books of karma are almost closed, the Buddha says, you come to that place where one grieves no more. Then you see that the mistakes of your past and their karmic payback were part of a pattern of spiritual growth stretching over many lives. Once paid for, those mistakes are no longer yours. They are the life history of a person made up of thoughts, desires, and motives that are gone. The karma of those thoughts applied to the old person, and it cannot stick to the new. Then the past carries no guilt and no regrets. You have learned what was to be learned. Recollecting past errors is like picking up a book about someone else, reading a page or two, and then putting it back on the shelf. Well, dang, that's all pretty highlightable too. Probably from there all the way down. And that's why one of those tricks Swami V gave also that I find to be a very beneficial one is to just hand it all right over to God. Or even I heard Ram Dass say that about Kali. Because of her darkness, she can absorb all things, all of your negativity, all of that. But you got to really give it to her. You got to really say, take this from me and be done with it. In the Western world, I find that that's where someone like Lilith can actually be a beneficial spirit or goddess to work with. Even though I know some people will say, that ain't a goddess, that's just a demon. Well, that's what a lot of people say about Lucifer too, but it's kind of they got all kinds of functions. So just know what you're getting yourself into, know what you're looking for before you just go jumping into spirit work. You may wait and wait at this threshold, consumed in a patient impatience. A patient impatience. Doing everything possible during the day to allow you to break through in your next meditation. This can go on for days, months, even years. Yeah, I'll say about this too that when it comes to performing rituals and practices and all of that, there's definitely a lot of time where I certainly will start to notice different kind of changes, different kind of confirmations, advancement, all of that kind of early on. But for the most part, there's been a lot of stuff that it's not until about a year at least. About a lot of times, it's almost exactly where like I really, really notice. Oh, oh. So that's why I'm saying you really gotta have this patience for yourself. But he put it good here, a patient impatience. But yeah, you will get the synchronicities, you will get the things that lets you know you're on the right track, but also you'll notice that a lot of times it will take a good chunk of time before things will start really kicking in. So that's another reason why it's good to have your journal, your diary, your record, because then yeah, you might have one of those aha moments, and then you go double check what you wrote when you actually did the ritual, maybe a couple things you've written about it since, and then all kinds of different things start clicking. Okay, so this can go on for days, months, even years. It is not really in your hands. But then suddenly the mind process stops and stays stopped. You slip through, and the waters of the collective unconscious close over your head. Beyond this, words are useless. Time stops with the mind, and many physiological processes are almost suspended. But there is an intense, unbroken flood of joy to which even the body and nervous system respond. This experience cannot last. Like a diver, you have to come up for air. But unity has left an indelible imprint. Never again will you believe yourself a separate creature, a finite physical entity that was born to die. You know firsthand that you are inseparable from the whole of creation, and you are charged by the power of this experience to serve all life. Okay, I'm gonna get a little water, and then we're on to the fourth dhyana. All right. Even this is not journey's end. Like a traveler returning from another country, you remember clearly what you have seen in Bodhi. Yet during the day, the everyday world closes in around you again. Such is the power of the mind that the mundane soon seems real and unity something far away. The third jhana, the conditioned instincts of the mind, are stilled but not destroyed. They remain like seeds, ready to sprout when you return to surface awareness. The experience of unity has to be repeated over and over until those seeds are burned out so they can never sprout again. Definitely keep that one in mind. The experience of unity has to be repeated over and over until those seeds are burned out so that they can never sprout again. We know what power a compulsive desire can have at the surface of the mind. In these depths, that power is magnified 1,000 times. You feel as if you are standing on the floor of an ocean where no light has ever reached, buffeted by currents you cannot understand. Then you know that the mind is a field of forces. Mind is a field of forces. But that does not tell you how to deal with these forces. In the unconscious, the will does not operate. You, you make progress. To make progress, you have to learn to make it operate so that you can harness the power of the unconscious in everyday life. That is the challenge of crossing the third dhyana, compared with which skydiving and whitewater racing are armchair exploits. Your goal is to reach such a depth that even in dreams, the awareness of unity remains unbroken. Then every corner of the mind is flooded with light. The partitions fall, consciousness is unified from surface to seabed. You are awake on the floor of the unconscious, and life is a seamless whole. This is nirvana. The seeds of a separate personality have been burned out. They will not germinate again. When you return to the surface of consciousness, you pick up the appearance of personality and slip it on again. But it is the personality of a new man, a new woman, purified of separateness and reborn in the love of life. There you go. Check your ego at the door. That's why I say that. I don't say you need to get rid of your ego. You need to obliterate your ego. Your ego is the enemy. None of that. Nope, that's some BS too. Nope, you need to check your ego at the door just like you check your coat at the door when you go into whatever place. You put it back on again when you leave, right? And now you've got whatever place you've been to, you've got that experience as you put your coat back on again. But you can say this is the ultimate version of that. Those who achieve this exalted state, the Buddha says simply, have done what has to be done. They have fulfilled the purpose of life. They may be born again if they choose in order to help others to attain the goal. But this is their choice, not a matter of compulsion. And I can't say on that one for sure, but I've certainly heard that teaching plenty of times, especially from the different aspects of Buddhism. Magic as well, though, because that was one of the things that attracted me about magic. Like I said, that I had already been interested in Buddhism and trying to apply aspects of Buddhism in my life, and then had heard about magic, and the way I heard it worded was basically exactly that. You go through the enlightenment, you do the what's being said here, and then from there you get to choose if you want to come back to help others or if you want to just, I don't know, be done, whatever that done means now for you. We get to just kind of choose what it is. Therefore, the Buddha says, this body is their last. Samsara, the ceaseless round of birth and death, has no beginning, but it has an end. Nirvana. Nirvana has a beginning, but once attained, it has no end. So there you go. That could also be looked at as like the wheel of samsara or of dukkha. And then why he says once you, that could be also why he words it the way that once you start picking up the wheel of dharma, you start upon the wheel of dharma, that it has no end, because once you reach that nirvana, there's nothing beyond that. That's the highest possible you can go. As a word, nirvana is negative. It means to blow out, as one would extinguish a fire. And the Buddha often describes it as putting out, cooling, or quenching the fires of self-will and selfish passion. But the forces of the word is entirely positive. Like the English word flawless, it expresses perfection as the absence of any fault. Perfection, the Buddha implies, is our real nature. All we have to do is remove the self-centeredness that covers it. And Mr. Chicago 26, what's up? Welcome in. Says so deep. Thank you for this. Absolutely. I'm glad that you're finding it beneficial. I certainly am enjoying it too. So that's what's up. Many blessings, and I'm glad to see you here. Someone once asked the Buddha skeptically, what have you gained through meditation? The Buddha replied, nothing at all. Then, Blessed One, what good is it? Let me tell you what I lost through meditation: sickness, anger, depression, insecurity, the burden of old age, the fear of death. That is the good of meditation, which leads to nirvana. And that's going to come after, yeah, after you've made it all the way through to this stage, though, because there's a lot of people who will hear something like that. So then they'll try meditation a few times, not really giving it their all. And then because they won't see the results they're hoping for immediately, because they don't have that patience and all that, then yeah, they just kind of give up on it. What draws one back from this sublime state? The separate personality is lost, yet we cannot say nothing remains. There is a kind of shadow which the Buddha wears, clothing him in humanity, yet it is so thin that the radiance of infinity transfigures him. Siddhartha dissolved in the fourth dhyana and one called the Buddha returned from it. That is all we can say. There have been mystics east and west who did not care to return, who let their bodies go rather than leave this blissful state. But the Buddha was not this kind. He had been born for a purpose, not just to attain nirvana for himself, but to bring it to all. And he was not willing to leave until that purpose was fulfilled. Even at these depths, where personality is gone, a will remains that is unbreakable. The Buddha's universe. The story of the Buddha captures the heart of this luminous teacher who, in his own words, loved the world as a mother loves her only child. But there is more to the Buddha than his heart. As with a good physician, behind that immense compassion is the penetrating vision of a scientific mind. It is this scientific outlook that I now want to touch on, for it produced a worldview of very contemporary appeal. Some years ago, the BBC produced a brilliant television series called Einstein's Universe, showing how the world would look if we could see the effects of relativity. It is a fascinating realm, full of bent rays of light, warps in time, and black holes in the fabric of space itself. Just as fascinating is the Buddha's universe, his view of life after attaining nirvana. Relativity and quantum theory, in fact, provide excellent illustrations of this strange world, so contrary to common sense. In the Buddha's universe, a personal, separate self is an illusion, just as substance is an illusion to the atomic physicist. Distinctions between an outside world and an inner realm of the mind are arbitrary. Everything in the human experience takes place in one field of forces which comprises both matter and mind. Thought and physical events act and react upon each other as naturally and inescapably as do matter and energy. But the basis of the natural world is not physical. As Einstein described matter and energy solely in terms of the geometry of space time, the Buddha describes matter, energy, and mental events as the structure of a fabric we can call consciousness. His universe is a process of continuous change, a seething sea of primordial energy, of which the mind and the physical world are only different aspects. And yeah, when you really look at your field of vision, try thinking of it as that you're looking at a screen that's so big. You're in the movie theater, you're in the front row, but you're at a screen that's so big you can't see the edges of it. Okay. This next section is personality. Set the Buddha down on another world, like Armstrong and Aldrin on the moon, and he doesn't stand around marveling. He immediately starts ferreting out secrets. Instead of basking in bliss on the night of his enlightenment, he looks around on the seabed of the unconscious and begins tracing connections. In physics, the realization that light is not continuous led to a new view of the world. Much in the Buddha's worldview stems from a similar discovery about thought. Like light, we can say thought consists of quanta, discrete bursts of energy. The Buddha referred to these thought quanta as dharmas, not dharma in the sense of the underlying law of life, but in another sense, meaning something like a state of being. When the thinking process slows considerably, it is seen to be a series of such dharmas, each unconnected with those before or after. One dharma arises and subsides in a moment. Then another arises to replace it, and it too dies away. Each moment is now, and it is the succession of such moments that creates the sense of time. The Buddha would say these dharmas come from nowhere and they return to nowhere. Mind is a series of thought moments, as unconnected as the successive images of a movie. A movie screen does not really connect one moment's image to the next, and similarly, there is no substrate beneath the mind to connect thoughts. The mind is the thoughts, and only the speed of thinking creates the illusion that there is something continuous and substantial. For the personal ego, which seems so real and considers its satisfaction so all important, this does not add up to an attractive self image. The bundle of thoughts, memories, desires, fears, urges, anxieties, and aspirations that we think of as ourselves is largely an illusion. A lot of separate mental events temporarily associated with the physical body, but nothing that anyone could call a whole. Even in such abstract thinking, the Buddha remains in touch with his audience. Everyone would have been familiar with the village marketplace, where vendors spread their wares on mats for passersby to see. When someone wants spices for that night's dinner, the spice seller takes a banana leaf, doles out little heaps of coriander, ginger, and the like, wraps them up in the leaf, and ties the bundle with a banana string. That is how the Buddha describes personality, a blend of five skandhas, or heaps, of ingredients like these piles of spices in their banana leaf wrapper. These ingredients are rupa, form, vedana, sensation or feeling, samjna, perception, samskara, oh, maybe that one's actually samgya because the JN thing, uh, perception, samskara, the forces or impulses of the mind, and vijnana, consciousness. Without reference to an individual self or soul, the Buddha says that birth is the coming together of these aggregates, death is their breaking apart. Form is the body with which most of us identify ourselves and others. It is the sameness of body from day to day that provides the continuity of who we are. When the body dies, what is left? Even in an afterlife, we can't really imagine ourselves without form. For the Buddha, however, this physical identification is as ridiculous as mistaking the dinner spices for the leaf in which they are wrapped. The body is only a wrapper. Most of a person is mind, which is a blend every bit as particular as a physical body is. We identify a person by referring to his big hands, his dimple, his fingerprints, the mole on his left cheek. The Buddha would refer to a person's mind print, his big ego, her tender heart, her fondness for chocolate, his fear of being wrong. But these characteristics are not fixed. Okay. Let's see. The blend is subtly but constantly changing in response to what we think and experience. Just as biologists say the physical body itself is constantly changing at the chemical level. The skandhas are not substances but processes, and the mind, in Buddhist terms, is a field of forces. The second skandha is a sensation or feeling. When we identify with the body, it is only natural that we identify also with the sensations it experiences, whether pleasant, painful, or neutral. Many people, for example, register a pleasant sensation when they smell fresh coffee brewing. They will tell you that coffee has a pleasant smell, and if this were a factual saying, as saying it has a brown color. But these attributions are personal, conditioned by past experience and association. In my native state of Kerala, South India, if people see you drinking coffee, they are likely to ask, "Aren't you feeling well?" Kerala is tea country. Coffee is something you would drink if only if you were sick. In reality, the smell of brewing coffee is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. It is just a smell. But when we identify ourselves with the skandhas, We cannot usually see this. We identify with our response. The third skanda is usually called perception, but more accurately, it is the act of naming the sensation experience, right? So in the Bible, Adam was instructed by God to name everything. There you go. If the nose reports a deep, strong aroma of roasted beans, the next thing the mind does is label it coffee. That name carries all the associations of our conditioning to coffee has built up for us, depending on our culture and context. The fourth skanda is the strong, instinctive, gut level reactions triggered by this naming. In the case of coffee, the Buddha would say we react not so much to the coffee itself as to our perception or label of it, the conditioned habit of liking or disliking. The Sanskrit name for this is samskara, which means literally that which is intensely done. Samskaras are thought, speech, or behavior motivated by the desire to get some experience for oneself. We can think of samskaras as grooves of conditioning, compulsive desires. This is the skanda which prompts action, or more accurately, which prompts karma for action. Here includes thought. A person with a strong coffee samskara will smell it brewing and think, I want some. Someone from Kerala might say, how unappealing. Whatever the label, if we act on a samskara, it becomes stronger. The conditioning is reinforced, making it more likely that we will act on that samskara the next time. Samskaras are the key to the character, but their root is deep below the level of consciousness. We see what they do, but we have very little control over the forces themselves. The last skanda is vijnana, consciousness, the appropriation of each unit of experience to the mass of conditioning formed by the experience of the past. Vijnana is like a river carrying the accumulated karma of all previous thought and action. When I smell coffee, the sensation may awaken a coffee samskara. If it does, my response to that samskara becomes one more piece of flotsam in the stream of consciousness, joining the experiences which represent the whole history of my contact with coffee, beginning with the first time I smelled it brewing. It is this stream of consciousness that we identify with a self because its experiences seem to have happened to a particular individual. But according to the Buddha, this self is only imagined, superimposed on momentary, unconnected mental events. If the mind is compared to a movie, Vijnana is like the series of clicks of the camera shutter. This frame, and nothing outside it, is I. This is I. This is I. The Buddha would ask, what is I? What we see is simply not there. We see the image flash by and think we are watching Clark Gable, but in reality, of course, we are watching no one, only a series of stills. Right. What is I? What is reading this book right now? What is listening to me reading this book right now? Okay, I'm gonna get a little more water, and then we've got still about 10 more pages, so we might be a little bit longer today, but easy. Okay, the world. This is unsettling enough, but it is only the beginning. The opening verse of the Dhammapada takes us to the next step. Our life is shaped by our mind, for we become what we think. These simple lines are both the subtlest and most practical in the Dhammapada. The words are too rich for any translation to convey their full meaning. Literally, they say, mind is the forerunner of all dharmas. All follow the mind, all are made out of mind. And so when you really reflect on the magician card in the tarot, and also know that that card was at one time called the juggler, well, that can give you some really deep insights to things. Dharmas has a double edge here. It means at the same time both things and thoughts. To the Buddha, everything is a dharma, a mental event. We don't really experience the world, he observes. We experience constructs in the mind made up from information from the senses. This information is already a kind of code. We don't actually see things, for example, we interpret as separate objects a mass of electrochemical impulses received by the brain. And of course, this information covers only a narrow range of sensibility limited to what the senses can register. But from this scanty data, the mind makes a whole world. We have grown used to the idea that there is much more out there than we can be aware of. But this is not what the Buddha is saying. He drops the convention of out there altogether. Everything in experience is mind. Same thing we learned in the Hermetica too, right? What we call things are objects in consciousness. Not that they are imaginary, but their characteristics are mental constructions. Like the other skandhas, form is a category of mind. And so, see, this is also where things like solipsism come into play because people will start thinking that, oh, I'm the only thing that's real, and everything else is just a figment of my imagination, basically. But he even said right there, not that they are imaginary, but their characteristics are mental constructions. And so, if human beings are like an ultimate creating machine of the creator, and we're all sort of in this kind of feedback loop of building creation around us, then yeah, we would all experience certain things at least pretty close to the same. But then there also is the idea that we could all be like in a zoo looking at an elephant, and each person would be seeing a different part or aspect of this element and having different thoughts about it and all of that. As I was driving to the beach for a walk, it struck me that from far off the sand appears solid. Only when we stand on it and touch it can we see it is really billions of particles. The same is true even with things that are really solid, such as a boulder at the water's edge. Physicists resolve even subatomic particles into energy, making substance a tool for everyday communication rather than a description of reality. Similarly, the Buddha reduces all experience of things and of ourselves to dharmas. Deep in consciousness, a common sense experience, like a beautiful sunset, revolves into skandha events, like sight contact of color patterns, accompanied by pleasurable sensation. There is no self in such events, and no real distinction between observer and observed. The Buddha, I think, would not have been surprised by the discoveries of this century which turned classical physics upside down. The essential discontinuity in nature observed by quantum physicists follows naturally from the Buddha's experience of the discontinuity of thought. So does the idea that time is discontinuous, which may find a place in physics also. We have to be very careful of misunderstanding here, for the Buddha is not saying that the physical world is a figment of imagination. That would imply a real world to compare with, and this is the real world. We are not making it up, but neither are we misperceiving a reality out there where things are solid and individuals are separate. But the planets aren't real. What the Buddha is telling us is precisely parallel to what the quantum physicists say. When we examine the universe closely, it dissolves into discontinuity and a flux of fields of energy. But in the Buddha's universe, the mind matter duality is gone. These are fields of consciousness. When Einstein talked about clocks slowing down in a powerful gravitational field, or when Heisenberg said we can determine either the momentum or the position of an electron, but not both, most physicists felt a natural tendency to treat these as apparent aberrations, like the illusion that a stick bends when placed in a glass of water. It took decades for physicists to accept that there is no real universe, like the real stick, refer to without an observer. Clocks really do slow down and electrons really are indeterminable. That is the way the universe actually is. Similarly, the Buddha would say this universe we talk of is made of mind. There is no real world in itself apart from our perceiving it. This doesn't make physical reality any less physical. It only reminds us that what we see in the world is shaped by the structure of consciousness. This has radical implications, one of which is that mind and matter are different ways of looking at the same thing. Today, we are used to thinking of matter as frozen energy. Mind, too, can be considered energy in a different form. You may remember Bohr's principle of complementarity. To get a whole picture of light, we have to describe it as waves and as particles at the same time. Similarly, the Buddha would say if we look at experience one way, in the ordinary waking state, we see physical reality. If we look at it another way, we might see mind. Or, excuse me, we see mind. In profound meditation, one goes beyond sensory appearance and eventually beyond the very structure of the phenomenal world. Time, space, causality. Time stops. There is only the present moment. Then everything is pure energy, a sea of light. We want to ask matter and mind are different aspects of what same thing? It's all very well to say consciousness, but what does that mean? Like most quantum physicists, however, the Buddha doesn't try to explain further. The question doesn't make sense. It can be answered without creating confusion and contradiction. And anyway, it is unnecessary. When you ask a physicist what ultimate reality is like, he or she is likely to reply, we can describe accurately, and that's enough. The laws are the reality. The Buddha does the same. He says, this is the way the universe is. If you want to know more, go see for yourself. This is not heady philosophy. It has some surprisingly practical implications. One is that if we see life as we are, one is that we see life as we are. The world of our experiences is partly of our own making, colored and distorted by the past experiences that each person identifies with a personal ego. My relationship with you is not with you as you see yourself, but with you as I see you, a waxworks creation in my mind. As a result, two people can share the same house and literally live in different worlds. If these ideas were better understood, they could make our planet a very different place. We have a story in India about two men, one high minded and generous, the other very selfish, who were sent to foreign lands and asked to tell what kind of people they found there. The first reported that he had found people basically good at heart, not very different from those at home. The second man felt envious hearing this, for in the place he visited, everyone was selfish, scheming, and cruel. Both, of course, were describing the same land. We see as we are, and our foreign policy follows what we see. Those who see themselves surrounded by a hostile world preparing for war tend to make that vision a reality. It follows that when we change ourselves, we have already begun to change the world. Heisenberg taught physicists that in subatomic realms, the observer affects the observation. The way we ask an experimental question, the kind of answer we will get. In the Buddha's universe, this is true for all experience. If a hostile person learns to slow down his thinking enough to see how much of what provokes him is projected by his own mind, his world changes and so does his behavior, which in turn changes the world for those around him. Little by little, and so that's exactly it, where everybody has their job to do, and some jobs might suck worse than others, but also you've really got to figure out just how much this really is a very challenging job, or how much you're just doing it to yourself. Little by little, the Buddha says, we make ourselves good as a bucket fills with water drop by drop. Little by little, too, we change the world we live in. Even the grand, earth shaking events of history have their origins in individual thought. All right. Karma, death, and birth. Placing physical phenomena and mind in the same field may seem confusing at first, but like Einstein's marriage of matter and energy, it leads to a view of the world that is elegant in its simplicity. Much in the Buddha's universe, in fact, can be understood as a generalization of physical laws to a larger sphere. The law of karma, for example, which seems so exotic when mind and matter are relegated to different worlds, simply states that cause and effect apply universally, and that the effect is of the nature of the cause. Every event, mental or physical, has to have effects, whether in the mind, in action, or in both, and each such effect becomes a cause itself. To the Buddha, the universe is a vast sea where any stone thrown raises ripples among billions of other ripples. Karma raises ripple effects within personality and without, for both are in the same field of forces. When we pursue our own self interest, we are adding to a sea of selfish behavior in which we too live. Sooner or later, the consequences cannot help but come back to us. Karma is stored in the mind. What we call personality is made up of karma, for it is the accumulation of everything we have done and said and thought. So karma follows wherever we go. Fly in the sky, burrow in the ground, says the Buddha. You cannot escape the consequences of your actions. You can run, but you cannot hide. All of us have karmic scores to settle, a book of debts and credits that is constantly growing. The end of the body cannot clear these accounts, for although the skandhas of personality come apart, I consciousness is not destroyed. Thus, we come logically to the last theme of the Buddha's universe, the cycle of death and rebirth. Here again, let me illustrate from Einstein, who proposed that instead of talking only about particles, we talk also about fields. At very small distances, the field we call an electron is so intense that it behaves like a particle. At a greater distance, the strength of the field drops off rapidly, but strictly speaking, it never vanishes. For practical purpose, it has local definition. But a universe of such fields is a whole, not a collection of parts. And to speak of particular fields as separate is like isolating currents and whirlpools in the ocean, sometimes practical, but superficial. To the Buddha, the field of forces we think of as personality is similar. It can be talked about meaningfully, yet it is not separate from the rest of life. As a subatomic particle seems to form out of states of energy and then dissolves into energy again, individual creatures come into physical existence and pass from it again and again in the ceaseless process called samsara, the flux of life. However, while the creation or destruction of an electron may be a matter of chance, I consciousness re enters physical existence according to the karma that remains to be worked out. We choose the context in which we are born, not consciously, of course, but by the sum of our previous actions and desires. Think of the way an oak tree propagates itself. An acorn ripens and falls, germinates when the physical conditions are right, and grows into another oak. We see two separate oaks, but on the atomic level, a biologist can trace a continuous flow of energy from tree to acorn to tree. In a similar way, the Buddha would trace the individual packet of forces we call personality. When these forces are expressed physically, that is the interval between birth and death. But after death, just as the basic characteristics of the oak tree lie dormant in the acorn's genetic code, the forces of an individual personality still cohere, waiting to burst into life again when the proper conditions are present. Personally, I find this no more miraculous than what the acorn does. A seed does not contribute much materially to the plant it grows into. The material comes from the soil, sunlight, water, and air. What the seed contributes is information. It has the same DNA as every other living entity, but when its genes begin to be expressed, it pulls from the environment what is needed to make a plant of just a particular kind. We wonder at this, but we accept it because it is physical. The Buddha finds personality process just as real. Those who question him on this level of observation play a dangerous game, for no one is more relentlessly logical. If we object that what he calls a person is not the same from one life to the next, he will ask, are you the same from one day to the next? We think of ourselves as the same individual who went to school in Des Moines many years ago. But what is the basis for such a claim? Our desires, aspirations, and opinions may have all changed. Even our bones are not the same. Yet somehow there is continuity. I wasn't the same then, we object, but that wasn't a different person either. The Buddha replies, that is the relationship between you in this life and you in a past life. You are not the same, but neither are you different. Death is death is only the temporary end of a temporary phenomenon. To those who grasp this, death loses its fear. It is not the end, only a door into another room. Okay, Nirvana. And we just have a couple more pages left. During the first watch of the night of his enlightenment, the Buddha tells us he traced the personality known as Siddhartha Gautama back over many lives. In the second watch, he saw the world as if in a spotless mirror. The countless deaths and rebirths of other creatures, their context in life determined by the karma of past action, and compassion welled up within him. For he saw only blind paths of stimulus and response, no understanding of the laws that govern what we call fate, no awareness that we can take our lives into our own hands. In the last hours before dawn, he focused his attention on how to break this chain of suffering once and for all. The first link he saw is ignorance. Instead of seeing life as a flux, we insist on seeing what we want it to be, a collection of things and experiences with the power to satisfy. Instead of seeing our personality as it is, an impermanent process, we cling to what we want it to be, something real and separate and permanent. Come here. Come here. Come here. You're okay. You're okay. You make it real hard to highlight, though. All right, see you later then. From this root, ignorance arises. Trishna, the instant craving for personal satisfaction. Let's see. Let's see. Where am I going to highlight? Probably all of that right there. All right. From Trishna comes dukkha, the frustration and suffering that are the human condition. With our glimpse into the Buddha's universe, it is clear why human grasping seemed to him so ignorant and blind. We are trying to get from life something that is not there. Trying to find a real Clark Gable in a movie, trying to find some experience that will last. And what we are trying to hold on with isn't there either. We want to gratify a process with a process. The ego cannot be satisfied. The more we try, the more we suffer. But the frustration of this grasping, because it derives from ignorance, is not real. It is a shadow which can be dispelled by seeing life as it really is. The Buddha says succinctly, this arising, that arises. Whenever there is ignorance of life's nature, suffering has to follow. This subsiding, that subsides. As self-will dies, we awaken to our real nature. Then personal sorrow comes to an end. Highlight all that. What is this real nature? Here the Buddha remains silent. He comes to us to point the way, to show a path, but he steadfastly refuses to limit with words what we will find. Yet he does tell us that there is no more to, or that there is more to life than flux and process and the mechanical working out of karma. There is something unborn, unbecome, not made, and not compounded. If there were not, there would be no means of escape from what is born, become, made, and compounded. In the limitless sea of samsara, in the midst of change, there is an island, a farther shore, a realm of being that is utterly beyond the transient world in which we live. Nirvana. When the mind is stilled, the appearance of change and separateness vanishes and nirvana remains. It is shunyata, emptiness, only in that there is literally nothing there, no thing. But emptiness of process means fullness of being. Nirvana is aroga, freedom from all illness, Shiva, happiness, Kashema, security, Abhaya, the absence of fear, Shanta, peace of mind, Anashvara, freedom from compulsions, Ajara, untouched by age, Amata, unaffected by death. It is, in sum, Paramasukha, the highest joy. No thing. If you've never heard that before, that's an important one right there, too. Those who attain the island of nirvana can live thereafter in the sea of change without being swept away. They know what life is and know that there is something more. Lacking nothing, craving nothing, they stay in the world solely to help and serve. We cannot say they live without grief. It is their sensitiveness to the suffering of others that motivates their lives. But personal sorrow is gone. They live to give, and their capacity to go on giving is a source of joy so great that it cannot be measured against any sensation the world offers. Without understanding this dimension, the Buddha's universe is an intellectually heady affair that offers little satisfaction to the heart. When we hear that our personality is no more real than a movie, we may feel dejected, abandoned in an alien universe. The Buddha replies gently, "You don't understand. If life were not a process, if thought were continuous, we would have no freedom of choice, no alternative to human condition. It is because each thought is a moment of its own that we can change. Our life is shaped by our mind, for we become what we think. This is the essence of the Buddha's universe and the whole of the theme of the Dhammapada. If we can get hold of the thinking process, we can actually redo our personality, remake ourselves. Destructive ways of thinking can be rechanneled, constructive channels can be deepened, all through right effort and meditation. As irrigators lead water to their fields, as archers make their arrows straight, as carpenters carve wood, the wise shape their lives. The universe is hostile, Werner von Braun once said, only when you do not know its laws. To those who know and obey, the universe is friendly. When understood, the Buddha's universe, too, is anything but alien and inhibiting. It is a world full of hope, where everything we need to do can be done and everything that matters is within human reach. It is a world where kindness, unselfishness, nonviolence, and compassion for all creatures achieve what self interest and arrogance cannot. It is simply a world where any human being can be happy in goodness and the fullness of giving. We have the path to this world in the Dhammapada. All right, then. That does it for the introduction. So tomorrow, well, actually not tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll actually be back on to Class A and into Magic, Transcendental Magic, and then Thursday we will get into the Dhammapada proper. So awesome! Heck yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate all of your insights and all of your presence. Because if you're here, then you are definitely probably trying to do this for yourself. And Mr. Chicago, welcome to you. Oh, get you motivated. My bad, man. For some reason, I didn't see your comments on my phone, but I see you now. Reminds me of the apples of Herispides from the Hercules trials. Very cool. Okay, then. And thank you, Mr. Chicago. All right, you guys. Well, much love to you all. WBT, Once Your Goddess, Get You Motivated, Mr. Chicago, and everybody else, of course. I'll see you tomorrow for some more transcendental magic, also getting into the book proper of that, into the actual ritual and doctrine and ritual. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And as we get back into this on Thursday, well, seems like we got a couple good classes in our lap. So that's what's up. All right, then. Well, the rest of you enjoy what's left of this first weekend of spring. And I will see you tomorrow. Much love, many blessings. This has been Jay Baldea, and bye bye.